What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Roaring 20s podcast episode 4. Today we are bringing you guys a very special guest, but first we'll introduce ourselves. So I'm CJ Martindale.
I am Bradley Baker.
I'm Colton Bachman.
And I'm Collins Buckner.
Yep. And today, basically what we're going to be talking about is branding and basically how to build your brand and how to promote yourself to be able to actually get a gaining and following, and really just how to build yourself to be known by people. So we'll pretty much hop right into it. So first off, I guess just Collins, tell us a little bit about yourself so the viewers can, hear your life story.
Yeah, for sure. So I have always lived in northern Colorado. I was born in Fort Collins, but I lived in Wellington growing up. So it's like a farmer community, very small town. So there wasn't a whole lot to do except for dream and think up ways to kind of make it out of there. I moved back to Fort Collins around middle school. I met CJ in high school, and then I met these two through CJ. And it's been a blast so far. I've just been kind of pursuing the dream and trying to build a better life for myself.
It's awesome.
Yeah. It's kind of funny how all of us kind of started in smaller towns and how you kind of have really big dreams in small towns. And it's kind of weird that you said that. Like, there's not much to do but dream in a small town, and I felt that a lot. So that's cool.
Yeah. It's awesome.
And so, like, going through that community, what are some things that you struggled with and had to like overcome? Because I know your story pretty well, and there are some things that you had to overcome, definitely.
Yeah, so Wellington is a great town, but there were definitely some people who were not great, especially being like a smaller town that borders on like the meth area of Wyoming. You deal with like some racist people, some skids who are just crazy. You just kind of deal with a lot of weird stuff. So, I mean, the biggest thing I learned was to be aware of your situation at all times and keep your head on a swivel and just be quick on your feet. Kind of know how to navigate through situations, because whatever life throws at you is going to be different. And if you can't be reactive, you're kind of boned.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I guess like through that then, what happened after you kind of got out of Wellington? Because once you moved back to Fort Collins, like what was the story once you went to like high school and stuff?
Yeah, so I lived with my dad for a bit, and he was launching his business and struggling through that. And we would get evicted a lot of like moving homes, stuff like that. And it made it difficult to focus on school. So I focused a lot more on like the art of the hustle and just learning like, okay, it's the same stuff Gary Vee preaches. If I can buy something for $10 and flip it for $100, like that's what you need to do to claw your way up when you start from kind of below where most people start. Mainly just learning perseverance and hard work. That's really the only thing that's going to get you through the struggle.
Do you think you learned that from your dad, or do you think that that's always been something that's been installed in you? Like, have you always just been passionate about like getting out of that lifestyle, or like, I guess, like how has your story changed?
I definitely learned it from him and kind of evolved my own ideas around it.
Got it.
Yeah. And I would say pretty much I have a very similar story. Like, I lived with my mom till I was in 6th grade, and I moved 18 times before I was 12. And it was like probably, 2 or 3 times a year. Same story, move houses, move different cities, different schools, stuff like that. And it wasn't until I moved to my dad's to be working on a farm is like, that's what really gave me a lot of like hustle, I feel like, because my dad's the same mentality as he's really like, how do I take something like go to an auction, buy like cattle for like, I don't know, $400, like 10 of them, and then you let them graze and grow up for like 10 years, and then flip them for like $4,000 a cow. Like I feel like you really inherit a hustle, but that's not to be said that you can't develop one as well.
Yeah, I think sounds like what you're saying is it was definitely instilled in you from a young age, you know, but then you also kind of put your own spin on it and developed it into something that's your own, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And besides that, is there any more like struggles that you went through that like are really sticking out to you or that really changed you?
Yeah, I mean, plenty. We could go on for days. So through high school, obviously all that stuff was going on, getting evicted, kind of trying to keep up with school. I actually got kicked out of school with a 3.5 GPA because I did not have good enough attendance for them to receive funding for me.
Jeez.
So they wanted me to do an extra year, and I was like, I don't really get, well, I get why. Like, they told me why. They were like, because we're not getting paid for you to be here. But it was kind of a kick in the sack for me because it was like, I'm still busting ass to make grades, and I'm kind of getting played by the system right now. So I had to get my GED 2 weeks before all of my friends graduated. And then from there, it was a struggle to find people to hire me, to believe in me. Eventually, I got a temporary job that I turned into a full-time gig in a warehouse. And then I actually moved into sales at that company. And that's kind of what opened the door to my current job.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's never been easy for you.
No, it's always a claw up.
Always had to work for it.
Yeah.
But that's, I mean, still, it's a blessing in disguise, I feel like. Because when you have it hard in the beginning, it just teaches you so much more in the beginning. Like I'd personally rather, you know, learn all that stuff in the beginning and have to go through it and then be able to persevere through it.
Yeah.
And get those benefits down the line. Because
Yeah.
I think they really do help you. And it is tough stuff, but it's good to learn it young, I feel like.
For sure. And I feel like it's almost an advantage because once you've learned that, when you get the momentum rolling and when you learn how to hustle and how to be charismatic and network, you don't really forget those things.
Right.
And as you move forward, you're already ahead of the people who had everything handed to them and, you know, got to go party for 4 years. When they get out of school, they're starting way back where you started.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess why didn't you just lay down and kind of, because you could have gave up, right? Like you had multiple opportunities to kind of like just lay down, let life kick your ass and, you know, maybe just be a piece of shit for the rest of your life. We don't know. What was like, how was your mentality changing? Because I know a lot of people who had a really rough start, they never get out of that. So I'm curious to like how you got out of that.
I did lay down and give up for a while, actually. For about a whole summer, I just didn't do anything. And I came to the conclusion that, like, it is what you make it. And if I don't try to make things better, they're not going to get better. And all I've done is just become another statistic. So I wanted to prove a point that, like, even when life throws you these curveballs, you're not helpless and you can still move forward. No matter what it is, no matter how bad it is, there's still a way to move forward as long as you're still breathing.
Yeah. And all that matters is, you know, you were able to learn from that and understand, like, in the moment, like, hey, I'm not doing shit. And I've been there too. Like, that definitely lands for me. Like, there was a good time in my life that I was just going straight down. And I finally snapped out of it. But it's like getting everything to work for you instead of against you.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's really something that it's hard to do. It's like a muscle you got to build.
Yeah. And not even like getting things to work for you, because the fact of the matter is it won't, but like adaptation is is a huge factor. Like, cuz if you just sit there and you let life maul over you and you can't really adapt and shift and change kind of the way you think, then if you just be a stubborn motherfucker, it's not going to really go out for you all that well. But
Right.
it's adapting and changing your ways, but also just being like relentless.
Yeah, I guess it just meant like letting your past situations and experiences. I believe that they can work for you if you let them.
Yeah.
Instead of working
Like
against
strong
you.
suits.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
they can make you stronger mentally.
Yeah.
And thus, instead of, you know, just putting you down further in the hole. So, but
Yeah.
Yeah, and from all that struggle, is there, I guess, like what, so I know you learned a lot, but is there any like skills that you developed, or is there any like certain advantages you feel like you have now from that tough start?
Honestly, yeah. A lot of charisma, I like to refer to them as sales skills.
Yeah.
But basically just letting people know that you are not your past and kind of why they should trust you. Because if you're like a good person, you have integrity, it's okay to, in a sense, sell people on the idea of you, and why you should be allowed to work for them, even though you don't meet the credentials that they normally hire based on.
Right.
So if you can kind of, I don't want to use the term swindle because that's normally negative, but if you're able to prove to people why they should trust you and then actually follow through, I think that's probably the most powerful thing you can have in your arsenal.
Definitely.
And we're going to kind of go into that with like personal brand and stuff because, you kind of developed your own personal brand, your own personal charisma to be able to walk into a place and when you're underqualified and still get the job. So I think that's really important for people to know and kind of learn how to do. So it's going to be a really powerful episode and kind of breaking down those barriers and stuff for people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go ahead.
If you had just one quick more thing, I think that might be helpful to some of the viewers. If you could say one thing to them about if they're in a sticky situation, they're, in a dark spot in their life, things aren't going the way that they want, what's one thing that you would just kind of throw out there and say, hey, you could do this and it should make a difference in your life, just based off of your experience?
I would say no matter how complex it is, try to make it simple.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you can really break it down to, should I care about this or not? And if it's a little more complex than that, you can add a couple more options, but it really comes down to the yes or no decision to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
It's really
That's
good.
a very unique one. I don't think I've really ever heard someone say that.
Yeah.
That's a pretty moving and
It's
powerful.
helpful for me too.
Yeah.
For sure.
So yeah. What do you do now? Like, tell us about your work, kind of what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like work ethic. Like, so first, like, yeah, just what made you get like that work ethic, and then now where do you work?
Yeah, so the grind really started in that warehouse job. I basically had to prove to them why they should even hire me part-time and then move to full-time. Then eventually I was like, hey, I would probably be one of your best salespeople. And they were like, dude, you're 18. There's no way you would be one of our best salespeople. But I was like, I basically, again, it was like, trust me on this. Like, I know what I'm talking about. So I kicked ass at that job. And then Madwire came through and started doing the marketing for that company. And I was like, well, what I'm doing now is cool, but I would much rather do that. It sounds more fun. And then I learned more about the company and the culture, and I was like, that would definitely be more fun. They've got like ping pong tables. Like it looks like Google in there. I was like, I have to be a part of that.
Didn't they scout you out?
In a way, their partner told me I should apply and that he thought I'd be a really good fit.
Okay.
Because I was really, the new traffic they were bringing into our store, I was really, really handling that well. Whereas some people they'd been there 20, 30 years, they were having trouble adjusting to the changes. They weren't really sliding with it. But he was like, dude, you're kind of a rock star right now. Like, you should reach out to these people. Shout out Rob. That was a big help getting in the door there. But yeah, reaching out to Madwire was pretty terrifying. I basically had a choice between, because I knew I wanted to get out of my old job. I had a choice between selling cars and working at Madwire. And the car dealership wanted a decision 10 days before I had even heard back from Madwire. And I was like, yeah, no, like I'm not going to commit to that.
Yeah.
Because I want to give these guys a shot. I hadn't even heard back from them. And then to go through the whole process still not knowing if I'd have a job, that was pretty scary.
Yeah. A lot of anxiety with that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So now you're working at Madwire. Do you just do marketing for them, or is it?
So I'm a marketing consultant for Madwire. So business owners will reach out to us. We don't do any cold calling. It's all inbound leads. So
Yeah.
people will, fill out a form or they'll call us directly. I basically pick up my phone. I say, hey, it's Collins. And I figure out what's going on currently. Maybe their business is failing. Maybe they're doing really well and they need to take that off their plate. Basically figure out what's going on, how I can help them, and how to get them to the right team at Madwire. Because we do basically everything when it comes to digital marketing, but not everyone needs everything that we have.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, my job is to help them trim the fat and hopefully make their life a little bit easier or save their business sometimes.
Just more of like a streamlined process kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice.
So I guess what has Madwire taught you? Like, what are the tools that Madwire's given you?
They have taught me so much. The training process is 3 months there.
Wow.
Damn, that's a long time.
Yeah, and it's grueling. I mean, it's It's tough. So through that process, I learned a lot about myself. I learned how perseverant I can be. A little bit of insight. That is like you're doing 100 calls a day to clients who told us no in the past.
Yeah.
So it's people, they pick up the phone. You're like, hey, it's Collins. They're like, yeah, no, like get lost. It's basically 98 of those calls per day.
Yeah.
Are going that way. And then you get 2 who are like, oh, yeah, I'll talk to a marketing consultant. You send them over, and that's how you get paid in that training phase.
Nice.
So that process was super tough, but at the same time, I could tell that the sales training they were giving us was invaluable. They have a guy that they actually bought his company. He used to do recruiting for them.
Yeah.
And like a bunch of other companies, and they said, we're growing too fast. Like, we need you in-house. So they bought his company and his brother's company, and he's a master at sales. I mean, it's incredible. He's so good, we cannot pull him on calls because he would never actually get training done. But
That's crazy.
the things I've learned from them and just the subtle nuances and changing the way that you feel before you go on a phone call or the way that you posture yourself when you go on a phone call, it just changes the whole dynamic.
Right.
It's
Makes
like
sense.
you're like creating the space before it's actually happening, kind of, in a sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
And,
I
you're
should-
working backwards too.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say, and I'm sure that throws you some curveballs as well, because you don't know exactly what you're walking into either.
Yeah.
That's that adaptation again.
Yeah. So you do have to have a little bit of that naturally, and you have to know how to kind of swerve and make sure that you're staying ahead of the game. But at the same time, the tools they give us are second to none, and the technology that we have behind it is incredible. So
Yeah. And then, so how do you think Madwire has impacted like your personal life outside of work, if it has?
in a lot of ways. So the way that it's broken down is that we have our whole sales team of about 90 people, and then there are teams of 15.
Mm-hmm.
And in my team, our whole focus is effort and attitude. We don't really care about numbers, even though we do the best numbers every month. We care about making sure that everyone is putting in great effort, because that'll bring the sales. It'll come if you just follow the process.
Yeah.
And then attitude. We can't have any energy vampires on our team trying to bring everyone down. And those dudes have talked me through so much. I mean, the lessons that they have to offer are incredible, because they'll just say something to me. A lot of these dudes have been doing it for 9-10 years. They'll just say something that means nothing to them. And I'm like, whoa, you just blew my mind. And they're like, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just being surrounded by like very kind, very wise people has really helped me a lot, because I'm young. I can absorb basically every bit of information that's thrown at me.
Yeah.
And being in that space with so much experience is daunting for some people, but for me, it's awesome. It's like a limitless library
Yeah.
to learn
Right.
from.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's a really supportive community
Yeah.
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
And I think you brought up a really good point earlier, without you even possibly knowing you said it, was you have to make sure that there's no like energy vampires,
Yeah.
people who you work with. That's a very huge part of just everyday life that people don't really realize. But camaraderie and teamwork are so important to a job. Like, I mean, I know you know, and I know that these two know, but like having a team that actually supports you and is there for your personal life and not just your work life is huge.
I think that's like probably the biggest thing. I
Yeah,
mean, you
yeah.
can't get anything done
Oh,
if
yeah.
you aren't with people that are on the same page, supporting you, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I just think that's something that
Yeah.
companies in general just take it like
They don't do a good enough job.
they don't
with.
acknowledge it enough. Yeah.
Because the first thing, like when I talk to you guys, is like, what's going on? Like, I care more about your personal life than I do your work life, because
Right.
I want you to have a perfect work-life balance.
Right.
And I think that's huge. Like, you probably didn't even notice you said that, but it's like a huge point. Like
And
that's
not only for businesses too, but also like for people who are out there like with friend groups who have that energy
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
vampire,
Exactly.
Yeah.
you can't really get anything done or fulfill on your dreams if you have constantly someone that you're like entertaining almost,
Yeah.
because they're just down all the time. You're worried about them instead of worried about yourself.
Right.
yeah.
And
Gary
so-
V. Go ahead.
Yeah, just surrounding yourself with people that
Yep.
are on the same path or like have the same mindset of like openness, like caring about each other is just so important for growth and development,
Yep.
not only for yourself, but just like the whole community, the whole world.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think you can speak on that enough. I've seen
Oh,
both.
yeah.
I've seen both sides of the spectrum,
Yeah.
and it's
Gary,
it's vital.
I was gonna say Gary V talks about that nonstop. I'd say like once a podcast, he brings that up because it's probably one of the most important things is you can't go somewhere unless you're hanging around the same people who have like the same mindset as you, like a growth mindset. If you're a driven person, drop your deadbeat friends because they're not going to get you anywhere. They're just trying to get fucked up every weekend, drinking, smoking, doing whatever. Like, it's time just to move on from them. If you're driven, then go find that friend group. Go find a friend group that actually wants to do something with their life and has motivation.
Yeah. You don't have to be a dick about it. Like, you know, when you
exactly. You can
like,
still be friends.
You
or
can be friends with them, and you
out.
can still check in and care about them. Like, you don't have to, like, you know, cold shoulder them.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to just surround yourself more of the good than the bad. You can still go hang out. I still go hang out with a couple friends that, you know, they're really great people. They're just not doing a whole lot. And I can still have a great time with them. But then I know that, okay, like when I'm hanging out with this certain group, like I'm this person, like I gotta go. And this is what drives me.
Yeah. And it can be a really tough thing too, especially if you've, you know, been friends with them for a long time, because that's a bond that you've built. But it's not a healthy bond, and you just have to be able to recognize that stuff. And you have to make a decision, like, what do you want from your life? Like, do you want just this average, like, life that you're not going to go anywhere with, or do you want to take your life to the next level? And those are the tough decisions that you have to make. So,
yeah. Definitely. So we'll kind of shift the conversation a little bit back to Collins. So you're a brand and marketing genius, pretty much is what you've been telling us. You're not all the way at the top, but you're working your way to the top, and you know, a lot of growth in between. But what's the one thing that small businesses can do to grow their brand, grow their sales, just grow their business in general?
I think the most important piece is something that we touched on a little bit already, but culture. So when you look at these companies that have amazing brands, from big to small, it's kind of even independent people, it's the same across the board. If there is something wrong on the inside and people know about it, it doesn't matter what you put out into the world.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. It's like covering stuff up. It's like covering shit up, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like,
And people forget pretty quick, but
Putting frosting on a shit cake.
Yeah, it's like there's like that saying where you can't. I forget what it is, but
You can't put icing on a mud pie, something like that.
Yeah,
I like to
definitely.
say frosting on a shit cake. It's a little bit
That's a
better.
good one.
and shifting culture, you think it's from the start, or do you think if someone has had like a kind of a bad start, do you think they're able to shift the culture, or are they kind of screwed?
I think it depends on how bad. Sometimes we talk to people who need to rebrand completely, so they hire us to come up with like a new name, a new logo, stuff like that, just because maybe they bought the company and then they realized like the last owners really botched it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even in music, I've rebranded maybe 6 or 7 times because I'm just like, man, I did not put enough integrity behind that project, or I didn't do the right things there, and I don't want that to be the foundation for something that's going to last a really long time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So how long have you done music for?
Since I was a sophomore, but only seriously since the start of this year.
Okay.
Nice.
So then when it comes to like freelance branding, because that would be a personal endeavor and a personal business, how do you go about growing a brand if it's like just on your own? Like you're a freelance guy, like same with photographers or real estate agents, stuff like that. It's
pretty volatile and pretty competitive. So you have to make sure that you don't really misstep in your branding. Obviously, you can make mistakes, but if you're going to put out content, it's got to be at least consistent. It doesn't necessarily have to be fantastic because no one starts off great.
Yeah.
Yep.
You have to put in those hours and you have to learn, but you have to make sure whatever you're putting out there is kind of in alignment with what your audience wants, which sucks, but that's the trade-off you make for being able to be successful with a personal brand.
Right.
Because if you upset your audience enough and you lose them, your brand doesn't mean anything anymore.
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, like, I don't know, like some like Lil Nas or someone who's big, but it seems like their brand isn't all that like ethical or good. How are they like blowing up? You know?
I think there's just a hole in the market sometimes for people like that.
Yeah, just flukes like
Yeah.
that.
Especially in the music industry.
Yeah.
You see a lot of people come up and then it's like, oh, it's a new hype. It's a new Lil Pump, you know, and they're just not putting out great content. But it's the people like Drake or Lil Wayne or J. Cole that put out amazing content their whole careers, and that's why their careers last 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
And Lil Pump is a weird example. I love Lil Pump. So his little ad lib he does at the beginning of every song, like that's his brand, and it's consistency. So someone like Lil Nas X, like I couldn't identify anything with him besides Old Town Road. So unless
Yeah.
he wants to be putting out country trap for the rest of his life,
Yeah.
he's going to struggle with that change. And I don't know if you guys have heard of like Filthy Frank / Joji. He's a dude. He had a bunch of YouTube subscribers, and then he wanted to start taking music more seriously. And when he made that transition, it really messed up his brand because people were like, "Dude, you used to make funny stuff. Like, what are you doing? Like, I hate this new Filthy Frank." And he's like, "Well, good, because I'm not that anymore."
Okay, so what else, I guess, helps build a small brand just besides a community base, like a good community?
So besides like a good community and culture, there are two massive pieces of your brand that you can't neglect. There's visibility, because if no one knows you exist, they can't possibly like you. And then
Very
there's
true.
consistency. If they do like you, you don't want to switch up on them because, well, it's like
Right.
what we talked about before. You shoot yourself in the foot there.
Right.
So the reason culture is so important is because it's all about likability. People buy from brands that they like. And if they don't like the brand, the visibility doesn't matter because they're just seeing something they don't like.
Right.
And if they don't like the brand, consistency doesn't matter because you're consistently unlikable.
Yeah. It's kind of like a popularity contest.
In a way, yeah.
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 And so you mean just being visibility, just meaning like being in front of them all the time, right?
Yeah, not even all the time,
Or
but
is
just enough
a
so they don't
consistent-
forget about
got
you.
it.
Because
Yeah.
consumers get really, really distracted. Like,
Yeah.
a huge case study is CJ's watch. Every time I see one of CJ's watches, I think it's an MVMT watch, even though he only owns one.
Yeah.
And it's just because I see their brand all the time. So I'm like,
Right.
oh, he owns one of those watches. Every watch he owns must be an MVMT.
Right. And so like, yeah, being in front of consumers' eyes, like so that they can see you all the time is important, right? But is there like a certain extent that is too much? Or like also, I feel like if you have crappy content and you're still pushing out a ton of content, how does that kind of work?
Because you might gain people who like you eventually if you're just putting out a bunch, though, too, right? Or I don't know.
Well, if it's crappy, I mean, that's a hard threshold, though, because it's very subjective. So sometimes people appreciate the struggle. Like, there's some artists I follow, and I'm like, man, your music is awful, but I appreciate how hard you're trying
Yeah.
and how hard you go with it. And I know that if you keep up like this, it's going to be big one day.
Right.
Um,
So it's like kind of have to balance it.
yeah, you do have to balance it. And there is definitely, like, you can smother your audience for sure.
Mm-hmm.
There are some accounts you unfollow because the last 6 posts in your feed were them, and you're like,
Right.
wow, like,
It just gets
it's too
annoying.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think? I forget my question.
That's fine. I was gonna say, so for example, I have notifications turned on for every time like Complex posts, and every time, like every Friday, right around like 10 a.m., I'm pretty sure they post like 4 times right in the span of like 5 minutes. So is that like too much that because I'll scroll at that time and I'll see just like 7 Complex posts.
I think they should space it out, especially a company that big. I mean, I know they've got to do they can pay to just
Yeah.
wait 2 hours, but I think you should space it out because the thing is, the way Instagram and Facebook work, they're going to show your content when you post it, and they're only going to show it to about 30% of your audience. Now, what Complex might be doing is they might know that those 4 posts are going to reach completely different groups of people, so they might just try to saturate their whole scene, but Facebook and Instagram will only share your post until it's engaged with. And then when it's engaged with, they'll show it to more and more of your audience. So
Right.
I think
Okay.
it's important when you're building a brand and starting off new that you have consistent content and you make sure that you're always kind of spitting the same message so people can't call you out for being fake.
Right.
But at the same time, you want to kind of space it out so that people don't feel drowned.
Would you say it's like a quality over quantity kind of thing?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So more quality, you can put out a little less. You don't. Or I mean, if you have a ton of quality stuff, you can put out. I mean, there is like a certain extent that you said you don't want to smother your audience, but yeah,
If it's all really good, I mean,
put it out.
it's almost like you can't smother them. But
Yeah, if it's good enough, right?
yeah,
Makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense because they're just gonna keep if it's great content, who doesn't not want to see it, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's where like Gary Vee and stuff, he posts all the time, goes live all the time, and I mean he has his audience at his fingertips all the time because no matter what that guy says, people are listening.
Yeah.
And weren't you the one who told me, I was trying to figure it out who it was, I'm pretty sure it was you, who said Instagram and Facebook changed their algorithm like twice a day or some like crazy number?
yeah, it's actually 4 times a day.
Which
Wow.
is
Yeah.
insane. Like Google does it.
They do it twice a day.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
it's still
we-
like a pretty crazy
That's
amount.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
But before you told me that, we talked about it and we were saying like, oh, they probably change it like once a month or once a week. And then you came with me with that fact. I was like, holy shit, 4 times a day?
Yeah, I always
That's
thought it was
insane.
I always thought it was like once a year because I always see those Instagram or the YouTube videos or like how to like figure out the 2019 Instagram algorithm, but I didn't know it was like 4 times a day.
Well, and
That's
I
insane.
think the reason they do it is simply because they don't want anyone to game the system.
Right.
And the same thing with Google, especially Google, because their platform is, I mean, it's an industry maker. If you're at the top of Google organically, you're the Thanos of your industry.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
So I have a brand question for you then, since we're on the topic of Google. There's this new search engine that I forget what it's called. It's like Ecosia or something. It's like anytime you use that search engine, depending on how many people search, it's a nonprofit. All their money goes to like planting trees. I feel like that's a great brand. Like,
That is pretty
especially
cool.
in this day and age. Like, I don't know. I was just asking from a branding standpoint. That sounds like a really ethical, good community-based company. And they're like, I've heard of them for the past like week, and they're blowing up. They're like huge.
I think that's a really good way to build a brand. At the same time, obviously, you'll attract hate from people who just don't like that kind of stuff because they think it's gimmicky. But I think giving back to people and adding value to their lives or to the world in general is a really powerful way to build a brand.
Yeah.
And you think that, so if you can do that correctly, why is building a powerful brand so important? Like, why should companies invest everything into the brand?
Yeah, like why should someone invest in you to like brand for them?
The most important reason is simply because for every one person with a really good, unique idea, there are 10 other people who are in the process of either coming up with that idea or launching it.
Yeah.
Especially small business owners and especially musicians, artists. Those are the kinds of places where if you don't stand out and you don't have a brand behind you, if you're just like everyday Joe painter, no one cares.
Yeah. Yeah, because I feel like everybody's trying to figure out the new sexy thing,
Mm-hmm.
but you gotta like remember how many people are on this planet. Like there's bound to be people that are thinking the exact same thing that you're thinking. I feel like it's just whoever can get it out there the best and seen by the most people.
Yeah.
And you think, so the whole thing behind it, you think is just culture? At the end of the day, the whole branding thing is your culture of your company?
I think it is culture because if you can figure out what vibes within your company and then what kind of people would enjoy that, you're setting up an ecosystem where you're getting in front of people who have friends that will like you, so they'll share. You're setting up a system where they're going to handle most of the work for you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
This seems like a pretty redundant question. I don't know if it is, but who would benefit the most from branding then?
I would say the consumer.
Really?
Yeah. Because
I do not.
branding puts you in touch with a business that you like, right?
Yeah.
Like Nike,
Okay.
Starbucks.
Right.
So if you know where you can consistently find them or what they're up to or that they aren't going to switch up and suddenly you're attacked for drinking with a straw, I mean, it's
Yeah.
like the branding is there to make the consumer feel comfortable
Yeah.
and to let them know that they're making the right decision.
Something that when we were talking the first time I met you, you told me like you're wearing Vans not because of like what the shoe looks like or whatever. I forget kind of how you said it, but you're like you're wearing Vans because they're Vans. Like there's a lot of other companies that make like off-brand companies that make the same kind of shoe, but you're not buying those. You're buying the Vans because they're Vans. Kind of go into that a little bit more if you could.
Yeah, so that was when we were touching on kind of what my job is at Madwire when we first met. So a big portion of our goal with every company we work with and what I do on the side helping artists as well is I don't want someone to hire you because they need their house painted or because they need a plumber. I want them to hire you because they like you, and while they like you and you're on their mind, they do also need a plumber or a painter.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean it makes sense because look at Nike for example. I buy Nike, and when I buy Nike, it makes me feel good because I'm like I want to wear Nike.
It's
like
Nike,
it's Nike.
I want to
And
support that.
Yeah. And you support the whole all the athletes that Nike, like LeBron James. It's kind of like LeBron James has his own brand as well. And LeBron can go to the Lakers and all of his fans from the Heat and from the Cavs, they all follow LeBron just like everybody follows Nike because they just established themselves and they're never going to lose their consumer base.
It's like, yeah, it's kind of like you're supporting the people in that instance more than like, it's not even just about Nike. It's like, oh, I'm a LeBron fan.
Yeah.
You know,
it's the same thing about influencers are doing. They're getting their customers, and like that's what influencers are. They're just people trust them, and that's just all that branding is just trusting between customers and companies.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, is there a difference between the Nikes and the Foothills painting or the
like K-Swiss and Vans or like
Yeah,
well, I guess K-Swiss is pretty big too.
Gary
Shout out
V's-
Gary V.
Yeah, he's repping them now. Yeah.
But just like big names and small names, like what's the difference between those two people?
There is a pretty big difference, and well, I wouldn't say there's a big difference. There's a lot of little differences actually. So with a big brand, you're under more of a microscope. Everything you do is liable to be scrutinized because you are in front of millions of people a day.
Right.
Someone's going to notice something they don't like. They're going to have a similar group of people that don't like it as well. Kind of spreads like a wildfire. So that's where you have to be pretty careful, just because you don't want to run the risk of losing a massive chunk of your audience for doing something that was basically out of turn. You're not being consistent, essentially. Whereas when you're smaller and still building up, you can afford to misstep a couple times.
Yeah, definitely.
And you can try out new things, which is huge. That's how you get to be so big. But if Nike just decided they're like, hey, we're going to try something new. We're selling ice cream, no more shoes. It would probably fly for a couple days, but then people would be like, okay, when are we dropping some new shoes though?
Yeah, definitely.
So besides just numbers then, like let's say big company obviously has more numbers, like more employees, makes more money, has just more numbers, right? So besides just the numbers being different, is there like a mindset difference or some sort of like, can you touch on that? Like just a difference between like what makes someone big and what makes someone think that they can become big?
I have yet to find the threshold, and I try every time I talk to a new client. There is something different about people who go on to have those massive brands and people who kind of get stuck around the mid-range or stay stagnant kind of in the smaller area. So what I'll hear from people is very important to me and very important to what I do. If someone tells me they're not getting the business they deserve, or they're not going to be big enough to justify using us, I really don't like to waste my time.
Yeah.
Because their mindset isn't a growth mindset like we were talking about before. They're not thinking about the future that way. They're thinking, I'm going to be working this shop every single day of my life, this one location with this group of 5 employees, and that's what I'm going to do until I retire.
Right.
The people who are like, hey, yeah, so we tried, X and Y strategy. We're currently working on opening a second location, but we just want to make sure that we can get customers there. Like, they're thinking about expanding even though they don't have the business. But that's because their mind is set on expanding, and they're not going to compromise just because they don't have the clients.
Right.
And they're going to do it too.
Oh, they're
And-
absolutely going to do it.
And you know that, and you've seen that, I'm sure. The people who have the mindset of, I'm not going to stop, I'm growing the shit out of this, grow the shit out of it, right?
Yeah.
Just driven
Sometimes a little too
individuals.
fast even.
Yeah, right.
But they don't care. They're willing to scrape their knee and get hurt and take those chances.
Right.
Which is what everybody can do, not just if you're in a company, but just in your life. Like, take chances. You don't have to stop. You don't have to get content with anything in your life. And I think that's really important for people to distinct and understand is if you're continually growing, your life is changing, the people around you are changing, and you're impacting more people. And which is just what everybody wants, right? Like, doesn't everybody want to just like feel loved and love everybody around them? And if you stay in your box your whole entire life, whether it's in your business, whether it's your personal self, you're never going to be able to know what you could have been to other people, what you could have changed in other people's lives.
Yeah.
And that's just why we're here. That's why we're doing Roaring 20s podcast, because I want people to understand that they don't have to be in a box.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to be in a box. Get out of your box.
Yeah, it's hard because I think a lot of lives are run by fear.
Oh yeah.
And the fact that they're just gonna fall right on their face and fail.
You are. They're going to.
But it's so like it's important to fail. It's probably the most important thing to fail. You learn so much from failing. You know, Gary Vee says that. I've said that before, but he like seeks out ways that he can fail.
Yeah.
Because then you can build that aspect where he did fail. You can build that stronger, and it just builds the entire foundation of his entire company, his vision. It just makes it that much stronger.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think like that's really important, talking about like our podcast too, is just like we have no idea where this is going to go. And there's definitely already been some like negative feedback we've gotten, but like we're in it because we're trying to just change people's lives. I'm sure this podcast, all of Colin's knowledge and what he's saying right now, should definitely impact like a lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
And
I hope so.
yeah, and it
should.
should. And we're just in it because we're just trying to build something bigger for people. And yeah, like stuff will come and we're happy for that, but we want to do it mainly because we just want to give people the knowledge that we know and that our friends know and that our acquaintances know and people that are going to come on the show. And to touch on fear, just to give a little bit of good knowledge, is that people are only afraid of two things, and it's the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises, right?
When they're born, yeah.
Yeah, when you're
they're
born,
only born with two fears.
That's the two fears you're born with. And if you keep that kind of in contact and know that those are the only two things if you could stay with those your whole life, that'd
crazy.
be very amazing. But those are the two things that humans are born with to fear.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I remember hearing that in the forum.
Yep,
but
exactly.
like everything else that you're afraid of is just a made up story in your head that you put there based off of a circumstance that happened, and you made it mean that.
Yeah,
exactly.
And we'll get into a whole podcast about fear.
That's
a whole nother
an
podcast.
amazing one. Yeah,
it's
that's
like a
great
3-hour
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
podcast right there.
So I guess Collins is a couple last questions. Is just how has your values shifted, and what is like values that you want to give people, like that you've developed yourself, that you've had to learn the hard way? Like, what values have come out of your life that you want to give to the audience?
Wow. So I think the biggest one is perseverance. You can't succeed if you give up. And I mean, I think experimentation, honestly, you can't succeed if you don't try at all.
Yeah. You can't even fail if you don't try at all. And like
Absolutely.
Well, then you're filled with regret.
Yeah,
too.
that's the worst thing.
Yeah.
And Gary Vee says that. I feel like we're always
Yeah, we're always
on here.
Thank you, Gary
But
Vee.
that guy,
He's got the truth.
Yeah,
He's got the
he
truth.
knows what the fuck he's talking
Yeah.
about. So how does someone build their brand in a saturated market? Because, for example, like Colton and I both are photographers and do that on the side. It's a very saturated market. How does someone grow their personal brand to go over somebody else's, because it's a pretty saturated market?
That's a tough one. That's a huge part of my job, just learning, where they're at, not only in their business, but physically.
Mm-hmm.
So I can go on Google and figure out, all right, who's advertising, go into the back end of Facebook and see, who's advertising in this area, what kind of market do we have. I think the most important thing is you have to be better than them.
Yeah.
Because it's saturated, the big players are going to get complacent. If you're like, oh, there's 5,000 photographers, I'm one of the best 5. It's like, yeah, you're one of the best 5 as long as you try to be.
For now. Yeah.
But they start letting go, and we see that in real time.
Mm-hmm.
They just get complacent, and they give up.
And then the young gun comes through and takes all the, market, and they're like, damn, what happened? They can't get that back,
Yeah, just got to stay hungry.
Yeah.
For sure. And from the other end of that, it's not just them getting complacent, because someone else losing their spot will never guarantee that spot for you. The important thing is that since you're new and since they already are taking all of your business, try new things.
Yeah.
You will find something that is working better than anything they've ever tried.
And you're small enough to change and adapt,
exactly.
right? Like they're
you can't fail that way.
yeah, and they have too many systems in place already where they're kind of limited. So that's why like coming up, like just fail a lot, try a lot, fail short and fast, and then eventually you're gonna find your system that works, and you're gonna just progress and just and you're gonna pass them. And it's really yeah, that's just what it is.
I've got a big question for you now. Another one.
A big one.
How do you view the world differently now that you've been working in branding so much?
It's a little scary sometimes.
How so?
I think about everything I bought is only because it was shown to me. And all of that is very explicit these days. Like,
Yeah.
it's not the Wild West anymore. There's not just like one doctor in town, you know?
Right.
Like everything you buy, everyone you hire, everyone you work with is because they had their marketing on point when you were looking.
It's kind of scary.
Yeah.
It is
Wow.
terrifying. Because on one hand, it's controlled by money. Obviously, ads cost money. Whoever can afford the most ads is in front of the most people.
Right.
But it is also a culture thing, and that makes me feel a little bit better. Like, it goes back to what I was saying before. You can be in front of people, but if they don't like you, they don't care.
Yeah. So it kind of regulates itself out in a sense.
It does, and I'm actually really glad to see companies like Facebook and Google ignoring the dollar sign a little bit and saying, yes, you can pay for placement, but the only way to really succeed on our platform is quality content and informational content that is going to add value to people's lives.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So since you talked about like your personal value of perseverance is kind of like what you've gained, is that a value you think everyone should have, or if there's 1 to 3 values you think everyone should have, what would you say?
Perseverance for sure.
Okay.
I think self-reflection is also really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can't identify a problem, you can't fix it.
Yeah, that one's huge, I think, because you need to know where you're messing up and you need to know what you're doing well and bad at. And most people suppress that fact. And they're like, I'm doing everything great. And they just live in this fantasy fairy tale world. But if you actually look and see what you're not doing correctly and have that self-reflection, that is like a game changer, because then you're willing to take new things on and take new steps. You just have to be willing to put that aside and step into reality.
And I feel like that's a trap that a lot of people that have been successful in the early stages, they fall into, because they pat themselves on the back too much. And I think that you definitely have to acknowledge and be proud of like how far you've come, because I think that's definitely an important step. But that can't last very long. And then you just got to get back on the grind, be like, okay, what can I improve? What can I keep streamlining? You know, where can I take the next step? So,
Well, and I do that at my desk as well. It's important to keep a balance, because you don't want to be hard on yourself to the point where you're not improving because
Right.
you're getting depressed. But like, I'll write maybe 5 new notes a day and take 5 down that are just like, hey, on your calls, be more concise. You know,
right.
you're talking to someone who's a hardcore driver, do this. Like, I'll leave myself notes, but then I'll go back and listen to my calls to improve my sales process. And I'll also say, hey, you know, you're doing a great job. I'll like toss that on a note and throw it up on the other side, because you do have to have a little bit of encouragement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So also, like, that's a good point about self-reflection. There gets to a point where being sorry that you did something wrong becomes unworkable, because being sorry doesn't do anything. You know, being sorry doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't prove anyone. The only thing it does is it proves that you're sorry, and there's no workability with that. The only thing to do is to get back to work. Like, don't be sorry and sit in your sorrow for so long, because all that time is just wasted not doing what you should be doing and getting you further away from like what you promised you're gonna do. I think that's just a huge point. Like, self-reflection is huge.
Absolutely. And you don't want to dig yourself in ruts, and the same, it's a fine balance, like everything else. It's a fine balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are certainly times to be sorry if you're mistaking someone wrong. Like, if you're doing something like that's the fine line, is if you did something wrong, be sorry about it for a brief moment that you're sorry, and then do, okay, what am I going to do to justify it? Or what am I going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again? You know, and then just have a word in the matter. Cool. So besides self-reflection and perseverance, what's like one more, like your third one?
This is one that even I struggle with. Discipline. Just knowing when it's time to buckle down and get to it. And I know on the time management piece, or on the time management episode, I really like that you broke down, like, you have to have a calendar.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people struggle with time management, and that's a huge part of discipline. If I don't block out hours to do certain things, they just won't get done.
Doesn't happen.
Exactly.
And I feel like it's really easy in this day and age, especially to get distracted.
So easy.
I know I get distracted. You turn on the TV, turn on the Xbox, go on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, like 4 hours have gone by just
You're
scrolling.
sitting there with a bag of Cheetos in your lap and you're playing Fortnite with 3 of your friends.
Yeah. And I think it's really important. The time management thing is huge, and it's hard, especially with us because we're really young, and it's kind of hard to be like that, odd guy, the odd guy. Like, you're like, oh, you're not partying tonight? Oh, you're not drinking tonight? And it's kind of hard to be that person. But for the people out there who know that they should be doing something besides getting drunk on a Tuesday night, they should be working. The reward on the other side is that you're going to be so much further ahead of everybody else that did drink for 4 years and they didn't have a job, like, you're just going to be that much further in your career, in your process, in your happiness. And I think that it's important for people to just understand that you're going to have to give some shit up. You're going to miss a lot of stuff, and that's just what it's going to take to be successful.
Yeah.
For sure. There's sacrifices. And again, I'm not the master of discipline. I definitely need to work on it more, but what really helps is to break down the why.
Yeah,
for me.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why should I go to the gym? Because I need to be in better shape so I can be healthier. Why should I drink? Why should I drink on a Tuesday? If the answer is because it's Tuesday, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are in trouble.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and I guess, so what's one piece of advice that you would give us on the podcast, Roaring 20s brand? Like, what's one advice or I guess you can do multiple if you want, but just like, what would you offer us for improvement, for like developing this brand?
So first and foremost, I love the brand. I love the hell out of it, especially learning more about like why it's Roaring 20s and seeing the logo and watching it develop. I love all of it. And I honestly don't think anyone else is coming close right now to what you guys are building and to what you're starting.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Especially, I mean, even the timing. If you weren't all in your 20s, it kind of wouldn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like a little bit of luck plays into really good branding.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
At the same time, it is a lot of those other factors that I brought up. So you already have the culture piece down. You guys vibe really well. I felt very comfortable in here and coming in and hanging out with you guys sometimes on the weekends, stuff like that. And then you've got that consistency piece. I think visibility, though, got to get out there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just start promoting posts, make sure that obviously what you're promoting and putting out there is good and consistent with your brand. But everything I've seen so far, you could throw $20-$30 behind it on Facebook and blow this thing up a lot quicker, but still in a way that has integrity.
For sure. Yeah, that's definitely. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we've kind of identified too. We've really been out of integrity with that aspect.
Content. We haven't posted content, and like, we have release a video every week, but we really want to get in front of our audience and let them know, like, hey, we are here for you, and we have not done an exceptional job at that. Like, we're still learning, obviously. It's the first time we've done this, but
Yeah, it comes into just planning in more time,
For sure.
like what we talked about last week. That's just something we really need to improve on. We haven't put in as much time as we should, or that we want to.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things I see too. A lot of people don't understand the value of it because, like, why would I pay to get a post in front of 10,000 people? Especially when, spoiler alert, a lot of them won't actually even listen.
Yeah.
But it's for data, so you can figure out what kind of people like your content, because Facebook is selling you that data in that moment. They're renting it to you, basically.
Okay.
And then it's also making sure that when you find that 10-20% that does vibe with you, you're building lookalike campaigns to make sure that your return is a lot better next time.
Yeah. I know they do a bidding system. It's like CPL. It's click per 1,000.
Sometimes, yeah.
And that's why it says, like, your range is you can have between 10,000 and 12,000 people see this, and it can range between $4.72 to like $6, because depending on how many people see it, like, they're bidding it all the time. Because if you're trying to promote at the same time where a bunch of other people are, they're going to charge you a little bit more. It's like they're almost like I don't know, just what was just trying to like auction it off essentially. Jeez,
Yeah.
I can't think of the word.
Yeah, and an important piece of that too is that a lot of people have the misconception that if you're not selling something, you shouldn't even touch that portion of Instagram. But like, if you were to put your podcast out there, it's not to make monetary gain; it's to
Yeah,
impact people.
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, it's
that's
a very
what,
small price to pay to impact people.
For
yeah,
sure.
and I had a question about that because, yeah, we really aren't selling a product, and I've got asked that a lot, like, what are you guys selling? And I'm just like, we're not really selling anything but a dream for people to have.
Yeah.
And that was really good that you said that because I wasn't sure, like, if you can promote something if I'm not selling anything, but you absolutely can. And it's more about the people anyways.
Well, it's like, I mean, it's why we all watch Gary Vee, and we know we're nowhere near that. That's a dream to eventually be on that kind of level and stage. But we watch Gary Vee because of the valuable things that he offers into our life.
Yeah.
You know, he's not actually selling anything, but it's a lot more valuable
Yeah.
than
Oh,
anything
yeah.
that he could be selling.
Yeah, he's improving our lives
Yeah.
so much.
And it's all free content. That's his biggest thing is it's all free content. He doesn't, like, charge you $9.99 to come check out my week planner or whatever
Yeah.
it is.
Buy my
you know?
masterclass.
Or those
my masterclass. Like, come on.
those like Instagram ads that you get, and it's like buy my free book, and you have to pay the shipping or whatever.
Yeah.
And it says like it's originally $30, and it's like it'll
Yeah.
change your life and all this other stuff. But
Yeah, it is what it is. But I think that kind of wraps it up for the whole branding thing and everything that you have to offer. But I know that you want to bring the audience an interesting fact today. So
Oh yeah!
good
Wow.
interesting facts.
Interesting fact. We're going. NASA said we're going to the moon in 2024. We're gonna put people there, and they're gonna live there and mine water to make fuel and oxygen, so we can go deeper into space.
So it's gonna be like is it gonna be like a transport thing kind of, or is it?
Yeah, it's gonna be like a big gas station.
Huh.
Since there's like a bunch of
What?
water, they can split the water into fuel, and then into breathable air, and then obviously water for drinking.
What
That's
the
actually crazy
hell,
stuff,
dude?
man.
That's
We're on the
crazy.
brink of a new age.
Yeah, 2024.
It scares me though.
Yeah.
It really scares me.
Gosh,
Space is
because
big.
yeah.
It's so
Super
big.
scary out there.
Also,
It
the
is
thing
big.
is what happens when like we're spread out so far, and then it becomes like, well, we're gonna have war over who gets to rule the world, or like who gets to
Yeah,
rule the moon, or
I think it's just scalability though. Back in like the 1910 to 1920 era, you'd be pretty sad if like the chick you were vibing with moved like 10 miles away. You're like, I'm never gonna see her again.
Right.
And now you get sad if she moves to like Burma because you're like, dang, I'll probably never see her again.
Yeah.
So when she moves to Mars, then it's gonna be like, I should probably go hit up that girl from Burma because she's a lot closer.
yeah, at that point you can probably just walk through a teleporter and be like, hey, I'm here in Burma. What's up? We gonna do this or what?
Yeah.
That'd be unreal though.
Yeah.
I mean, would you guys get on a spaceship? I don't think.
no. Nope.
If they could guarantee I was coming back,
If they could put me to sleep, because I'm the most claustrophobic person ever.
I don't like the takeoff on airplanes though.
Oh,
So I
yeah,
feel like the
so
takeoff in
scary.
a rocket ship would just I would have a hard time.
Yeah, for sure.
You're just
But
getting
it'd be
thrown
beautiful
into your
to
seat.
see the Earth
It
from
would-
space.
yeah,
and
it really
to
would be.
experience it.
I wonder
would
if
go
it would be
crazy.
flat or not. That's.
That's true. You get to figure that one out once
Yeah.
and for all.
I know for your own eyes to see, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a plate, but
I
Just is
subscribe
what
to
it is.
dinosaur Earth theory.
Yeah.
It's shaped like a big T-Rex.
what? Okay.
But
Cool.
yeah, I think that's pretty much it here at Roaring Twenties. Thank you, Colin, so
Yeah.
much for
Yeah,
coming
thank you
on
guys
today.
so much for
Thank
And
you.
we have something to say thank you for. We got you
Oh.
something. So you can unwrap that, buddy.
Dude, this is blessed.
Just look at the color; it's pretty sick.
Dude, this is fucking tight.
It's a nice new Roaring 20 shirt,
Yeah.
custom made this morning.
I think
so.
they're a Gildan brand.
Yep. But yeah, it's a sick color, and I decided, we want to give you something and say thanks for being on the show.
Well, thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we can't thank you enough for
Yeah.
coming up here. It was kind of short notice too,
Yeah, really short notice.
and just preaching the knowledge you have. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I hope it can add value to people's lives. I hope it could add value to your lives. And
Definitely
it
did. I learned
certainly has
I learned
already.
a ton
Yeah,
today.
me
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. I just get to absorb it. Well,
I appreciate the movement for sure.
Yeah, for
Thank
sure.
you.
Cool. Well, I think we were signing off on Roaring 20s podcast.
Yeah.
Tune in next week and keep
We'll see
changing
you
lives.
then. Yep.
Later, guys.
Later.
Later.